Well, good morning. I'm Michael Greig. I'm a professor in the Department of Political Science. And the story I'm going to tell, I'm not sure whether it's the best or worst, and it's a little bit of both. And I think that the degree to which it's the best is probably more owing to my students than to anything that I did. I teach classes in conflict and conflict management. And one of the things that I really focus on when I teach these classes is I'm really worried about trying to teach about the concepts that we're talking about, but avoiding doing so in a really sterile environment, because we're typically talking about awful things that happen around the world and how we can manage them. So confidence building measures amongst parties in an ethnic conflict, or how peacekeepers can be deployed to a civil war in order to kind of manage the amount of violence or stop the spread of violence. And so during my classes, what I like to do is at about midterm, after the first exam, have a simulation. And the simulation is one that tries to put the students in the environments in which we're talking, so that they can kind of experience some of the things that we're talking about and kind of exercise some of the ideas that we've explored over the course of the semester. The problem, though, is that I'm always worried about that the stakes have to be enough that they care about the simulation to experience it. And so one of the early ones that I did in my time at UNT, I was really trying to weigh, how do I do this? And I thought about making it part of their exam grade, and I kind of wimped out because I imagined that things would go crazy and I'd have students that would hate one another. And so I just decided, well, we're just going to have this simulation. And so it was modeled on a fictionalized version of a civil war. And the students were kind of randomly assigned to a series of groups. So some students were assigned to a government group, some were part of a rebel group, some were part of the United Nations mission and things like that. And unbeknownst to me, I managed to, in assigning the groups, have a boyfriend and a girlfriend who had been together for a long period of time, who were in my class. One of them was in the government, and the other one was in the rebel group. And you can see where I'm headed. And so the simulation plays out, and my worries about them not being stakeholders proved to be unfounded, because they were really engaged and the class was really engaged, and so I was very, very happy. And then as the simulation is unfolding, they are becoming more and more unhappy with one another. So much so that by the end of the simulation, they have broken up. And so now I'm realizing that I am now Dr. Michael Greig, destroyer of dreams, which is not good. And so I'm thinking this is the worst moment of my teaching career. Fast forward a few weeks, and there's sort of this steady Cold War in my class between this couple who won't talk to one another. They're now sitting on opposite sides of the room. It was a class of about 30 students who had gotten to know one another. Unbeknownst to me, the students in my class, though, proceeded over the next few weeks to apply many of the principles that we had talked about in managing conflicts. So there were students that were creating back channels of diplomacy between the couple, who were talking about things that they shared in common, and kind of using that basic sort of principles that we talked about in terms of diplomacy and conflict management. So my students had resurrected what had been the worst teaching moment of my career and turned it into the best teaching moment of my career. And it was sort of illustrative of kind of two things that I've learned in teaching. One, I am not the conduit of all knowledge, that my students oftentimes are able to kind of find that path, and they did a very good job of that there. And I can never underestimate the degree to which they will surprise me. And each time I do these simulations in my classes, invariably they will surprise me. I haven't destroyed any more relationships, and I'm glad about that. But invariably, they will come up with something new and something different and something that's surprising. So, thank you.